Hey everybody, I'm here, the GlitterSquids, Marzia and Natanya. Just the two of us today, and we're here to talk about Outlander episode 204. I'll let Natanya pronounce it so we can get it correctly.
La Dame Blanche.
See?
Of course, I have a slight French-Canadian accent when I say that. I say Blanche instead of Blanche, but that's okay.
Much better than my German accent when I speak French, so.
Yeah, well, you know. Yeah, so interesting title I thought too for the show, since it seemed like a minor thing, but.
So to catch everybody up with what's happened in this episode, spoilers abound.
Mm-hmm.
And this week, it seems like we finally got to the payoffs from everything they set up last week and the week before that and the week before that. So it's the entire, you know, not the entire, but most of the second season's payoffs happen finally. So this week, we learned that the bitter cascara, which was sold in place of poison, that Claire gets that. Of course, because you can't set that up without paying enough.
Yes.
So
Although I will say the Comte is way too like glary. I feel like it's such a red herring. Like I don't even remember. I will full disclosure. I have no idea if it's actually him or not because I don't remember that was part of the books. But like the smoldering glance, like it's just almost to the point where it's nearly comical because he's such a striking man, like the particular actor, and so like every time he's like looking at her across the room, it was just a little much.
I don't think the book ever explicitly said, but
Really?
maybe I'm just not remembering.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's of course, you know, Comme Saint-Germain, see, bad accent, is of course the immediate suspect. She gets horribly ill, and goes to talk to Raymond about, you know, who did you sell this to? He takes her into a secret lair, which is awesome.
So cool. Again, like Hogwarts. I feel like they could totally do Monsieur Raymond like Hogwarts crossover to like Beauxbatons or something. There's just like the French School of Witchcraft and Wizardry just happens to be on the other side.
And so he reads her bones, like the knuckle bones, and because she's got somebody in mind, a friend whose future is uncertain and whose name is Frank. And he says, "Oh, don't worry, you'll see him again." So dun dun dun, foreshadowing. And let's see what else happens this episode.
We finally get the truth out to Jamie.
Yes, Jamie finally learns the truth, and instead of being pissed off and immediately running off to go to England to take revenge, he's extremely happy and willing to have sexual relations again. So he's cured.
Which is an interesting response, but yeah, we can talk about that more.
He also has a hokey story about a prostitute who really, really wanted to have sex with him, but he didn't. And he's got the bite marks to prove it. Not really sure. That in the book there was a weird story about a prostitute that wanted to sleep with him that seemed kind of dubious, but it actually took place earlier.
Yeah.
In the book, they basically resolved any sexual issues that he had, like at the end of the first book.
Right.
Like, he had none in the second book. He had some nightmares, but
well, he was worried about poking the baby in the face more than anything.
Yeah, exactly. Which, you know, is an understandable concern.
Come out blind or something.
So we've got resumed sexual relations, and then they finally did say that yes, Bonnie Prince Charlie is sleeping with, as it turns out, Louise.
Yes.
And she's pregnant. To resolve the situation, she wants to get an abortion, which sounds kind of scary and like dark I can't remember, some sort of like horrible sounding herb that she said, well, I can give you this, or you could maybe tell your husband it's his, And she decides that that's the better course of action. And so she also has a fight with Charles and tells him to go away because she's telling her husband the baby's his. So Claire and Jamie decide that they're going to use this as revenge. They're going to cause a big scandal, that they're gonna get everybody to hate Charlie, and nobody's going to fund his revolution if they get all the important players in the room at once and then reveal the big scandal. Mm-hmm. To which Claire wonders if that makes her a bad person, and to which I say, yes, it does. Yes, it does. So they have their plot. They're going to do it. Meanwhile, Claire has to go volunteer for an emergency at the hospital. She takes Mary with her, and Murtaugh and Fergus, and they're off to the hospital. An important detail is that the opening scene, they have a little vignette at the opening. If you watch it twice, like say I did, you'll notice that they show them putting a wheel on fixing a wheel, and the hand that's fixing the wheel has this peculiar little purple birthmark on it. So,
and fixing the wheel.
Fixing the wheel in retrospect means sabotaging it. Mm-hmm. So they're at the hospital. They're working really late, and the wagon wheel is broken on the carriage, so they have to walk all the way across Paris in the dark. But Murtaugh's there, so it should be fine, except that it's not fine.
It's like someone was waiting for them to have to walk home.
It is suspiciously like somebody was waiting for them to have to walk home. So they're attacked by a gang of masked men, one of whom has the mark on his hand. And they knock out Murtaugh so he can't help them. And one of them starts raping Mary. And thankfully they make this scene like a serious scene and not like the oh, I'm being raped and here are my boobs. Which really kind of drives me nuts when shows do that. And this show did that last season. Yeah. Except they were always near rapes. I'm going to make it scarier because look, I'm exposed now, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I still think that's kind of cheating, but I'm glad that they didn't play it that way for this one. So they managed to fight off the attackers, because when they see Claire, they suddenly go, La Dame Blanche, and run away. And they never do explain in this episode what that means.
Nope.
For those who read the book, we already know.
Or just
so I'm sure they'll get to that.
Just cannot remember.
But they just really don't like white people.
Except that,
it's the white lady. So
what, the whitest lady? So as usual, rape gets in the way of the good plot. So that makes it a lot harder for them to wreak revenge. At least Claire is certainly shaken by the time she gets back home, but she's like, I'm cool. This is good. I got this. Particularly funny as they dose up poor Mary with, I keep thinking milk of the poppy because I've been watching Game of Thrones. Give her some opium. And of course she'll be totally fine. And just let this rando guy that she's got the crush for, just keep an eye on her. This isn't going to be a problem.
Sure, Alex. Yeah, keep an eye on her and don't give her too much of this poppy seed syrup or else she'll hallucinate. And I've already given her some. And here it is right here. Don't give her too much. And he gives her all of it.
Yeah.
Like when they knock it over, it's completely empty. So yeah. So of course, during this dinner party where they're trying to set up a scandal, they set up a different scandal that they did not intend. Mary is now ruined. If anybody finds out that she's been raped, then it means that she can't marry anyone because she's not a pure virgin. Which, yay.
Spoiled goods. Come on, Marcia.
So she, of course, has too much of the opium, starts hallucinating, runs away, runs into the other room, creates a huge scandal. Alex tries to calm her down, falls on top of her in a suspiciously rapey pose when everybody walks in,
Yep.
and causes a big fight. The two people that do not, at this big dinner party, that do not seem to be all up in the scandal are the Duke of Sandringham, who is just upset that he doesn't get dessert and leaves. And then Comte Saint-Germain, who acts all calm, like, I'm gonna leave. Oh, you should leave too, Charlie. Let me go call the police to go in on this scandal here and make it a little bit worse. So they could just be manipulative and taking advantage of the situation, or they could be in on it. We don't know, at least not this episode.
Probably, yeah.
And we don't know what the white lady is.
Although we know that the necklace that she got from Raymond, it can detect poison, which I thought was an interesting little comment at the dinner party, which seems awfully witchcrafty. But again, she did travel through time through a bunch of standing stones, so I guess a little bit of magical realism thrown in there. So,
well, he says that it could be magic or it could be nature.
Yeah,
and then he charges more if it's magic.
Yeah, he's a good character. I like his counterpoint to her.
And actually in the book they describe him as being like very frog-like, that he has the features that look as much like a living frog as you could possibly imagine. He also has like no teeth there, so it's like a gummy smile, so it's even more frog-like. But I thought they did a great job of casting somebody who does kind of look frog-like.
Yeah, and I think we might have shared on our Facebook page, but there's actually an entire article written about his vest, like the symbols on it and what it means and stuff, which is really cool. Because again, like the costumes continue to be, absolutely amazing. Even Claire's dress, which was another red dress, which I thought was interesting, kind of but more of a blood red color, was absolutely gorgeous. And as well as the other dresses and everything in the series. So I'm impressed with the French fashion, but then again, I would be so. Although to say nothing of the kilts, and it's so interesting to continually see Murtaugh refuse to really go that route at all. He's like, I'm wearing my clothes. These are my clothes. This is my tartan. He doesn't have a Southern accent or anything like I just said, but he might as well be.
He sometimes has pants, but mostly it's kilts.
Yeah. And the long styled, which is kind of cool too. So yeah. And then of course the best scene I thought of the whole thing was Fergus chowing down on the food that everyone left behind.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and we also see a hint of Fergus's like, he's going somewhere because he's like totally knows how to read people.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody raised in a whorehouse, he has a conversation with Murtaugh where he completely reads Mary. He's like, well, she's been crying, but she's wearing perfume and she stopped stuttering. And, so I've decided she's totally in love with somebody else and not her fiance.
Yep.
Spot on.
Who we did briefly get to meet, at least through the doors, a little bit.
And he was exactly as disappointing as you would think that he would be.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what do we want to talk about first?
Oh, we just so many things.
Talk about the sex first, because I have one point that I wanted to bring up that I've been thinking about all week, or at least since Saturday when I watched this. But we talk a lot about how the show presents sexuality in a totally different way, and especially this romantic concept of the sort of burly Highlander and this attractive woman. And I thought what was really interesting is I think it was the scene leading up to when they finally did it again. But Jamie's sort of like disrobing, and I was thinking about how interesting it is and how it's one of the first times that I can remember ever watching television where it's not being shown from the male gaze. We're not getting sex scenes that are just completely cued in on the female, what she's experiencing, how she looks, how the light's playing off her boobs and her butt and all these things. It really is a female gaze equally looking at Jamie as an attractive, very attractive human being, looking down his shirt almost at a point, like seeing the firelight and seeing how he looks attractive. And I thought that was just so well done and so unusual to see in a show. And even though that wasn't the scene where they had consummated again, it just kind of brought the tension in a really important way to show that, Claire's been poisoned. She's feeling horrible, but she loves and desires her husband. And it's not something you can get across without really good cinematography. And I thought it was really impressive.
And when they are starting their fight just before, it's not Claire's boobs that we get flashed. It's Jamie's thighs and butt.
Yep. Yep. Which is, again, and it shouldn't be that weird. Like when people do it, they both do it. They're there. And it's like, we're just so programmed because the woman's body is usually what is telling the story. And although her stuff is nothing to snuff at, I mean, she's an extremely beautiful woman. It's just good to see that it's not necessary all the time. And they did pretty well with the Prego prosthetic. I thought it was...
Yeah, it was convincing enough, I think.
Convincing enough. It wasn't like, Full House Becky belly. Where it just looks like a pillow stuffed up in there. I don't know if there's any right way to resolve Jamie's coming around in terms of being able to be intimate with her again. I'm glad that they waited longer. It did seem weird to be so much immediately after finding out that Jack Randall was alive.
That was a good after-school special.
It was, and it was a little too like, I mean, he went away and he's like, I'm just going to go sleep in the other room because I'm mad at you. And then she goes to find him and it was like, oh, okay, cute, I get it. But I kind of would have preferred that it happened there because all of the flashbacks were happening in their bed, right? Like every single nightmare he had was literally in that moment. So I don't know, it didn't quite feel as much closure, I think, as I would have liked. And it felt a little bit less even than I would have liked. But again, I'm glad that they didn't just jump in full hog like they did in the books. And I'm glad he had more time to kind of...
I'm glad that they showed like the afterglow and that it was really, it was more intimacy than just sex intimacy because
Right.
He was talking about how he was lost, how he felt. I mean, it was, feelings, being vulnerable, very much, very intimate emotionally.
Yeah, and I thought that was really beautiful. And I recall, and maybe I just remember wrong, but something similar to that effect in the books of like this idea of that innermost temple of your being, that part of you that you feel is yours alone that no one knows, and having that broken through, and how that was the big trauma for him, that this one thing that he thought was his own was no longer his own. And that's the first time he's vocalized that, because we know and Claire knows the extent of the physical and sexual abuse, but this is really the first time where he kind of breaks it down in terms of the mental struggle. And in a time when things like depression and PTSD are just not a thing.
Right.
I think that modernized it pretty well for audiences who, I mean, very well could be dealing with similar things in their lives or people that they know. I thought that was just a good way to, again, like Jamie in the show has so many more shades to him that I feel personally. But I liked that. I thought that was the best part of the sex, to your point.
And so I read a critique, I think it might have been on Wired, where they were upset about Mary's rape at all, in the context of probably seeing too many, Game of Thrones rapes, and they're like, why are the writers making this choice? I think in this case it made sense from it was in the book. They weren't like Game of Thrones goes out of the way sometimes and adds rapes or confuses them in between and yeah. But it made sense from a plot standpoint, because it had the whole context of she's ruined now. Why would she be with Blackjack ever if she's already engaged with this French guy and she doesn't have any indication that she was going to run away or do anything else? So there has to be something that happens in between. It's awful that that's what happens because her life is already pretty awful.
Especially considering her conversation over the cards, the previous episode.
Considering that she had absolutely no knowledge of sex, and then, well, here's your education, and then on top of that, you're destined to marry a sadist who's also a rapist. Awesome.
Yeah, not super. And I mean, but I think to your point though, I don't ever think it's necessarily necessary. I think it's kind of a scary thought, but in terms of the discussion and the way that the book is going, and this is a really harsh world, and when women show agency and power. And it still holds true to this day. I mean, it's one of those things that you can do to a person, especially a woman. It's much easier to do to a woman in some cases. Happens all around the world. I mean, it's just when a woman gets out of line, that's what many men choose to do, and it's a horrible, horrible thing. But it would have been hard to find something that would have changed the course of the future, right? That Claire is trying to change to such an extent, because she knows she's the ancestress of her husband, and so, you know, we're one step. I have to say too that the actor who plays Alex really looks like he could be the brother of Frank. I mean, he has just a similar facial structure, and the way he's kind of acts and gesticulates, it's very similar. It was really interesting that they've clearly done their good casting there. So yeah, and so that whole scene, I mean, what are our, clearly there's some kind of group of vagabonds, bandits, something, folks that are after Claire particularly. Although I thought it was interesting that they singled out Mary and not her.
They did seem to specifically single out Mary. They looked fairly well to do. Mm-hmm. They weren't dressed in rags or anything, and they had fancy masks on. And yeah, they seemed to know that Mary was English, and I don't mm-hmm. think she'd said anything. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't think she'd said anything at that point. So yeah, that she seemed to be the target. And
they knew where they were headed, so they would have had to know some sense of what their plans were. So it had to be someone who was connected to the event, because and I thought it was a really interesting juxtaposition to have Jamie greeting all the guests in this sort of monotonous way, and on the other flip side, having this horrible thing happening. It was a very interesting choice to kind of put those two together. Like every couple that comes in is more opulent and more kind of simpering than the next. And then meanwhile, you know, they're fighting for their lives. And I'm sure there's going to be repercussions for Murtaugh, because he feels like he just screwed it all up. He just was not able to protect them.
And when you're hit from behind, it generally makes
and they hit him a couple
hard.
times. I mean, he put up a fight. He really did, but he just couldn't hold up his end there. Yeah, it's interesting too and that shows, I think, Claire's fortitude, her ability to kind of say, this was like, well, the worst thing that's ever happened, but you know, she's committed to trying to change the future, to try to save, you know, her husband and his friend's future at Culloden. And so she's willing to put all that aside, calm herself down, you know, get her stuff together, put on some lipstick, and gird her loins and go in and be the great hostess of a very awkward party.
Yeah. In the book, they just slightly rearrange the events, but it's essentially the same happening. That Mary is actually forced to attend the party. Like, she's not hiding and just trying to sleep. She's forced to attend this party.
Oh, wow.
So they have her like hopped up on poppy syrup, and she freaks out in the middle of it.
I think this probably worked better. I think that would have been another instance of probably going in a visual perspective to a modern audience. Forcing that would have probably been a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to read the book, but I just can't keep up with everything.
You know, I actually kind of regret having read the book, because I tend to prefer the choices that they choose for the show. I think that they have an advantage because they can re-examine it. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're writing a book, then I mean, that's the first time it's going out, and you don't have that second glance to think, well, maybe it would have worked better in retrospect this way. And so I think they've got a chance to rearrange things and make it pop a little bit. There were a few cases, dildos in the whorehouse, I'm looking at you, where I thought they made some really stupid choices.
Full body paint. It's really just mostly the whorehouse.
Yeah, I think it really is just mostly the whorehouse. Which was a choice that they made to focus so much on it, because Jamie had one story involving a whorehouse, and he found Fergus at one. And I think it was the same story. Like, that was the only involvement of whorehouse in the whole thing.
But if I recall too, there's like more places and people in the books, and it probably would have been confusing I think the choice to have like one central location where the sort of plotting and stuff is happening. There's both the library where they play chess, and then there's the whorehouse. And I think anything more than that, both from a scouting perspective of having, cause they're clearly filming in some tight corners, like that staircase outside. They've filmed there like 3 or 4 times and done scenes there. So that, I don't think they have a huge swath of Paris or wherever they're filming to really do that.
Scotland
So it kind of
looks like Paris, I think.
yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that's, and I think that when you are competing against, you know, big shows that have stuff like that, you know, that a certain audience is going to transfer over, they're kind of pushing it a little bit in terms of the riskiness. And I can understand that.
Well, there was plenty of risque there. It seemed to be more about, you know, who was having affairs with whom, which seemed to be a lot more normalized than it is shown in the TV show.
Yeah, I guess the moral of the story is don't have a monkey.
Yeah, monkeys, they if they bite everybody but their owner, then, you know, probably not a good pet.
Yep. But I thought that was interesting because that's more, as you mentioned, that's more of the book story, is really more Charles and his affair versus Charles and the general brothel experience. So yeah, the party didn't go. I think I continually just kind of can't stand Sandringham. I mean, he's like, at first you're like, oh, he's kind of a fop and he's kind of ridiculous, but I did love the part about I never settled down, never found a woman that could quite meet my requirements. I forget what he said, but it was a woman who would have me or something along those lines. But that was a little on the amusing side. I don't think he's looked too hard. It really is what I'm saying.
No, yeah. Yeah, he last season he seemed to like it was ambiguous, but this season he's clearly a bad guy.
Yeah. And he clearly adores the Randalls, and he's made it clear that that's who his allegiance it's to. It's yeah. Verbs are hard. Yeah, and as to your point, a lot of things did wrap up, but at the same time, kind of wondering where we're going to go this week. Gonna be interesting.
Yeah, well,
but I am glad Claire and Jamie are not hating on each other so much.
Yeah, I'm glad that we have resolved that part. I think that eventually we're going to get to that poison detecting jewelry, because you don't give somebody poison detecting jewelry unless it's going to detect poison during your season. I'm just saying yeah. So it's that's got to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. She's still pregnant, so we still have a pregnancy to go through.
Certainly far more pregnant than she was at the beginning of the series or the other season. So I mean, obviously something sad is going to happen. I think at this point, I think anyone can draw the conclusion that unless she goes back in time and then forward in time,
that she's definitely more pregnant than she. Yeah, well, I mean, she could give up a baby but yeah, she's definitely more pregnant now than she was when she arrived in England in the future, mm-hmm. or in Scotland in the future. And then we also have the Jack Randall. Mm-hmm. Something's gonna happen with that. We've got to deal with the consequences of what happened with Mary.
Yeah. And it was nice. You had mentioned last week too that in the book she was more involved with the hospital. I thought it was cool to have her there this time to show the burgeoning friendship between Claire and her, which is kind of nice to see.
And I'm also glad that they didn't choose to cure her stuttering the same way that they did in the book, which is by telling her to sing. Oh. That would have been just annoying after 5 minutes.
Yeah. I don't remember that either. Man, I like huge parts are just completely, not in my brain anymore. Yet I know all the lyrics to all of Guys and Dolls by heart. So it's completely not my choice of what I select necessarily. So yeah, I guess, what are you hoping to see personally in the next couple episodes without being spoilery?
Without being spoilery. Yeah, no, I'm hoping to see the poison necklace. I'm hoping to see what happens with the pregnancy. Dreading. But I want that storyline to be completed, so that we have that mystery solved. And then let's move forward or not forward. And I'm assuming that forward is the way that we're going to move with the revolution, since we already know from the future that it happened.
Yeah, it's hard to tell what time we're in at this point because time is moving kind of at a weird pace. There's like no indication what season it is. Like it's all sort of out there. I guess I would love to see. I kind of miss having those sweet intimate moments with Jamie and Claire. They kind of make me hope for the future. It's like they went through all this crap and they still love each other, and they do, like, they love each other more every time, and that's kind of special. I think I'm looking forward to the resolve of whoever those people were who assaulted her. Figure out who her enemies are, because that's an important component to the success that they're having. I mean, you get noticed, you get enemies. It's kind of how it works. Maybe figuring out why the comp keeps staring at her. I think there might be I almost wonder if it's one of those he's going to declare his love for her kind of things. Like, I want you to be my mistress. Ever since I saw you on the docks, I thought you were the most amazing thing. So who knows? And then, I mean, I think that Jamie's had that. We didn't really talk about that, but that was a really weird conversation with the bite marks. And I felt like they took it probably a level too far. Like, it should have been lipstick on the collar. Like, lipstick on the collar, you're like, well, maybe you smell like perfume and you got a kiss on your cheek. But when it was like bite marks in your inner groin.
And more than one.
Yeah.
Why are you still there if she bit you once?
Right. So that didn't quite hold. That didn't feel necessarily like Jamie.
Well, knowing what we do about Jamie is he does tend to like his pleasure and pain mixed together, which was part of the problem that he had, because Blackjack threw him a whammy by doing exactly that.
Right.
That would be in character for him if he were actually sleeping with the prostitute.
Right. I think that's what I mean. I feel like he let her. It went further than I thought this Jamie would do. But that's just me. He's still stinking cute, so we'll forgive him.
Well, maybe we'll see the thighs again next week.
Yeah, and I'm starting to miss our friends back in Scotland. Like, I kind of want to see what Mrs. Fitz is doing and what's going on with Duncan and all this stuff. Like, I miss that. For all the opulence and beauty that we have in Paris, I'm hoping that we eventually get back there, and because there certainly are, stories that are happening consecutively, I'm assuming, because the time is passing up there. So the other side of the revolution, my dog is barking at my cat outside my door. So if the growling is not me.
And we're also going to find out what the heck, La Dame Blanche is.
Yeah, and what that means. But she's not particularly pale, I don't think, compared to other pale people. It's a very pale people plot.
Well, that would seem like a ghost name,
Yeah, but I didn't feel like she was dressed very ghostly or anything.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't dressed in white.
Oh, and I'm hoping to see more of Mother Hildegard, because I think she's kind of amazing.
She is kind of amazing. That's true.
I kind of want like a whole. It would be awesome to have like Mother Hildegard's murder mysteries or something. She could totally rock it. Like Murder, She Wrote, but in 18th century France.
Spin-off ideas.
Cool. I think we've covered mostly everything.
I think we have, yeah. So we've got the mystery of La Dame Blanche. We've got Jamie and Claire getting back together again. Intimate moments again, and not fighting with each other constantly. At least not over that. Although from the previews, we're going to get some more fighting.
As you do.
We've got mystery enemies. I think we've got a lot to look forward to. And, we'll be back. I think we're going to make Monday night again.
Yeah, should be. And you can always leave a comment or a question on, we have multiple outlets, but you can always be sure we'll find it over on our YouTube page. Or on, Marzia posted a great recap of the episode if you want to read the whole thing at glittersquid.com. It is the most recent article, I believe.
It is. And, give us a like or give us a comment. We're happy to hear from you. If we like your question, we'll answer it on the air the next week. And so until next week, we'll see ya.